call to order. The Runnemede Board of Education meeting is called to order. The Board of Education is in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, titled the Open Public Meetings Act. The time, date, and location of this meeting was appropriately advertised by notifying the retrospect as well as posting notices in Borough Hall, Runnemede Post Office, Maryville School, United Bingham School, Grace Downey School, and the Runnemede Public School District website. Roll call, board members, please.
Ms. Adair, Ms. Anderson, Ms. Beebe,
Here.
Mr. Buckheim, Ms. Davidson,
Here.
Ms. Farry, Mr. Impagliazzo, Ms. Panzarella,
Here.
Ms. Spalding.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Also present, Mark Iannucci, Superintendent, Sean McCarron, Business Administrator, Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction, Jade Yezzi, Principal, Bingham Downing School, Phil Silva, Vice Principal, Maryville School, Frank Hines, Supervisor of Building and Grounds. At this time, we would like to welcome back Mr. Calavita, our school auditor, to present the 2015 audit.
Did you want me to wait for a couple?
No, actually, he's flying in from
Okay.
another state, and someone else is running late from work, so you have a quorum, so here we
Okay.
are. Thank you, I
All right.
appreciate it, though.
I appreciate what you're doing for me. Okay, for those of you that have heard this all before, you actually have a three-phase audit. One is the traditional financial phase where we have balance sheets, income statements, and we deal with the dollars and money. And the second phase has to do with compliance. You have to follow the rules of the state, the federal government, and the local ordinances. And we have what's called compliance supplements, and we check a whole host of things out for compliance. So again, there's financial, and there's compliance. There's a third phase, internal control. That means how you run your business. This is a sizable business in town, and you have to run it in a business-like manner. So it's incumbent on us as the auditors to see how your system works, see if the system's designed right, and report accordingly. And along the way, we make a few suggestions. So again, that's your three, I'll say this, I'll repeat myself just a little. We have a three-phase audit. The financial phase. That wasn't her. The financial phase, the compliance phase, and the internal control phase on how you run your business. We perform that audit on this thing called the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It also has demographics and a whole lot of gobbledygook. This year I'm going to add something new. The national accountants decided that the pensions throughout the country are so underfunded, probably 30-some billion in Jersey alone. They want all the districts, including New Jersey, to report your piece of the problem. And your piece of the problem, if you go to page 20 in your, if you can see page 20 in your CAFRA, I'll tell you what the amount is, $3,031,000. That is a lot of money. Now, I called the state today because of the meeting I was at last night, and I said, well, are they going to come to you for the money? And the answer is, we don't know, we doubt it, who knows, and we'll wait and see what happens in the future. And the state is innocent in this one. It's really the national accounts pushing for this. So what they did to confuse it more, if you write this down so that later in your leisure, if you choose, you can follow that. Page 53, note 21 explains that we had to take last year's opening balance in your first balance sheet, and we had to just ignore it and restate it. This explains how it was restated. It was approximately $2,992,000 minus $117,000. I'm not going to get into that gobbledygook because it really doesn't affect you. But basically almost $3 million, we changed your opening balance to reflect your share a year ago of the unfunded public employees pension. The TPAF is paid by the state.
Just real quick, sorry,
Yes.
quick question. So, just out of our school district, we're $3 million short paying into pensions, basically.
Yes and no. Yes, it's your share, but will you have to pay this in the near future? No one knows.
So,
They might just leave it unfunded, or the state might come up with the money. There's
what's that
really
3
no-
million shortage based off?
The actuarials, they take the teachers that are retired
Right,
and the ones that are here, and they take guesses how long they'll live,
right.
what the wages will be, what the income will be. And they put that milkshake together and they come out with the cost, and they see what's in the investments, the difference is unfunded.
So that 3 million shortage is just for the teachers and just out of the school district that are retired and going to retire.
It's actually the retirees that are not teachers. The portion that you're short on the teachers is way more, but the state pays it. That one's a real mess. These are the non-TPAF wages.
So correct me if I'm wrong, just so Joe understands, this isn't anything that the school district neglected to do.
No.
It's just a new procedure that was placed on auditors when they look at the school district financials that they now need to include
I can
within their
give you-
audit summary.
I can give you what I think is the right answer. If you have, do you have a couple minutes, or do you want to explain what really happened?
Yeah, I'd like you to
Okay.
thoroughly answer this.
When I was a young guy coming out of school, wages were around $4,000. Benefits were low. Well, over the years, some of the people that started with me in 1973, they went from like $4,000 up to, who knows, 60, 70, 80, 90,000. And the pension benefit for several years was based on the last 3 years. And then some of my good friends who became administrators, they end up like 100-some thousand. Well, all during those years, they didn't kick a lot of money in. And this isn't only the teachers, it's also the public employees, pension, the non-certified employees. So, if earnings skyrocketed and there was money all over the place, it would be a problem. Well, that didn't happen. And with the meltdown, it got worse. That's why it's unfunded. And New Jersey, for whatever reason, including the state doesn't have a lot of money, they haven't been cutting this unfunded portion down, and it's mushroomed to a whole lot of billions. So, for the first time, however, the national accounts, in their infinite wisdom, they decided this year to hold up your season 2 weeks. This was due a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I had till the 21st. I don't want to say I'm early, but they extended the calendar 2 weeks because we only got the numbers 3 weeks ago, with not too much guidance on how to put it together. So we had to figure that out, and so forth and so on. The bottom line is your share is $3 million. Who knows if you'll ever get a bill for any of it? I don't know now. And if something comes down the pike, I'm sure Sean will know before I do probably, or simultaneously. You'll address it then. Whatever happens, I'm sure it can't be good. It's either you won't owe anything and it'll stay unfunded, or you'll have to contribute towards it. And again, when I find out, I'll let you know. But the reason I went into that is to explain why you can't even start with last year's number in the front balance sheet and income statement. You can't even follow it forward because of this note on page 53. Now, how do you really run your business? We're going to skip a whole bunch of things, and we're going to go to what is C as in cat 1. Now that starts, that's why I would write this down, page 55 through 60. This is the meat and potatoes. There's only 5 sheets that have to do with how you run your business expenditure-wise. It's the budgetary schedule. When you do your budget, you spend a ton of time on it. This is the budget basis. Now, remember I said you didn't have a lot of money in the front schedules? Well, if you look on C1 at the bottom, it looks like you have a lot of money. That's because the unfunded portion isn't reflected here. Now, there are 2 things I need to explain that I think is important for you to know. You have to maintain reserves. There are 4 types of basic reserves: capital reserve, maintenance reserve, emergency reserve, and tuition reserve if you owe tuition. You don't have a tuition reserve right now. You have a maintenance reserve and capital reserve. You do not have an emergency reserve either. So your money is basically,
Sorry.
no, your
Okay.
money is tied up in capital reserve because your buildings are older. They need a lot of money, millions upon millions. You have to come up with down payment money. Over the last several years, you've squirreled away a little bit of money for your down payments. And that's how you're gonna maintain your buildings as long as the state gives you a little piece of it, your down payment, and maybe you'd have to go out on debt at some point. So, you're in good shape because at least you have some down payment money to do the projects this year. But what looks like a lot of money is not. If it's your household, it looks like a whole lot of money. But for running an enterprise with 3 different schools on both sides of the pipe, it's not.
And
So,
also, that money is reflective of the current ROD grants, because we did not start those projects until July 1, and the audit is as of June 30th, 15.
that's right.
So therefore, that money is still shown, even though we spent that to do the roof, the windows, and the doors among the 3 buildings.
Yeah, the majority of your surplus is already spent. Now, your statutory requirement tonight. Finally, we get to why we're here. You have to know what your findings were, and you have to have a corrective action plan. You have to have a meeting within 30 days of the audit. We had to redo the letters in the audit because of the delay. And anyway, on the little document, you only have one finding, and it is very minor. Something was classified as capital expenditure instead of supplies. They are very strict on not putting anything under $2,000 as equipment. Why? There's a lot of reasons probably, but I am required to put it in your audit. That is the only finding this year. Now, if you go back year 2, 3, 4, where you had several BAs, the turnover was rampant, you had monetary problems, you had budget trouble, everything you can imagine. We're not there right now, okay? So this is your one finding of a misclassification. Your corrective action plan will be in front of you. Your responsibility will be to entertain approving your audit. And that is your statutory responsibility. Now, final comment I want to make is you're in a good place right now with continuity and stability in your business office. That's all I deal with. I'm not part of your curriculum or anything like that. So right now it's running smooth. There are no problems. You're not switching systems back and forth like you did 2 different times. You've got the same system, you have the same people. They've had mentoring in the past. So it's a very good situation right now. You just hope the money keeps pace with the capabilities and the infrastructure of your business office. Now, with that said, I'll open up to questions, and anytime you need me, either a phone call or call me and I'll come see you. I'm only down the street.
Quick question.
Sure.
Is there anything you suggest us to do to prepare for this possible $3 million bill that was my flashlight?
I'll tell you what I would do. I would keep my capital reserve up, my maintenance reserve, because if ever you had to dip in to this as a problem, other things are going to go on the back burner. Maintenance always gets put on the back burner when times get tough, right? So I would put away maintenance reserves in case you couldn't handle what needs to be done. Your roof, I understand, blew up. Well, you have to do something. Well, if there's no money there, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get the charge card out, not, they use a regular charge card, but you're gonna borrow.
I remember that.
You're gonna, in so many words, you're gonna either do a capital lease, which has interest expense, or you're gonna issue a bonds. And right now, if you notice, you don't have that. So once you dip into that thing, your debt is not just 1 or 2 years. It's a long-term thing, and it'll cripple a small town. So, especially with a lot of maintenance issues. So, you asked me, I'm telling you, I'd have maintenance reserve and capital reserve in case 1 year, if it's built into your tax rate, which is the important part. If 1 year you gotta back off of the tax rate, no, I can't afford maintenance, I might have to pay pension, then you use your maintenance reserve to paste together things like putting the roof on or fixing the roof. And as you know, you can't fix a roof like at home for $3,000-4,000 or $7,000. It's, you know, several $100,000 in government buildings. So that, as the best of my ability, that's the answer to your question. Now, hopefully it'll never come to you for 2 cents of this unfunded portion, but I have no idea. And I asked the question today, and there is no answer.
Depends on who's in charge.
I'm surprised I got through to some relatively high-end person who, we know each other from doing this 42 years. They'll talk to you if they have something to say. They're very accommodating.
And Ray, just so the board's aware, every June you pass a resolution that allows us to move money into capital reserves and maintenance reserves. So while we've already spent that amount of money, which was our local share, for the Rod Grant projects for our local share portion, we've already started replenishing the money that we've taken out to try and build those reserve accounts back to where they were. Because like you said, it's always gonna be something else that we're gonna be working towards to try and keep the facilities as best as possible.
This 3 million won't happen all the time, will it? Is it an ongoing thing, or is this just a?
That's what it's
just a
built up
catch-up?
over 40 years.
Over 40 years.
Right, that's only the PERS.
Right, it's the
The
first.
TPAF part, the teachers, that's at the state end, because they pay for that. That's probably way worse. I don't have it with me, I wish I brought it. I have that number too at the office, but you don't pay for it, so.
So how did it get to this number for just us? Is it just based off, is there a way to
Okay,
know the
they
people that we
pay,
have?
one of what used to be the big 8 accounting firms, now there's 4 of them. They paid a big 4 accounting firm to do, I don't know if it's forensic or whatever. They did an analysis, and it says unaudited, but they did an analysis of New Jersey PERS and TPAF and police and fire, PFRS, and also the court system. They did analyses of all of their pensions, and they use all kinds of actuarial statistics. It's actually more mathematics than accounting. And again, they're deciding, well, how long is this person going to live, and what are they getting, and how much do you think we're going to earn? There's all kinds of machinations in there. Yes, sir.
This might be a silly question. Did they reevaluate Will's whole process to begin with that got them in this hole? Correct that?
No, because it's kind of so obvious that they don't even do that. They had a mechanism that people put very little into the pension. It's not a defined contribution, it's a defined benefit plan. And later on, now it's time to pay. And the amount that was contributed or earned is way less, or funded in the state budget is way less than what the expenditures have been.
So then, is that deficit continuing to grow right now?
Yes.
then?
So really, we didn't put enough in to pay out the back end, is what happened.
Well, it's also the state, they ran into trouble, and they're not paying an employer share per se, because they're the employer of the teachers, not the PERS. The PERS, that's just outright, as I said, wages started at 4,000, and for a while they're handing out the pension when people retire based on the last few years, not on the average over many years, and that mechanism, I don't know how it could have worked, and I'm not gonna say it doesn't work. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'll just say, I don't know how it could possibly have worked. And, people are living longer also. There are all kinds of factors. But the mathematics of it didn't work. The defined benefit plan was drawn up when wages were very low. And wages, I'm not gonna get into whether wages are good or bad. I'm not gonna fall into that trap. I'm just gonna say they're so much higher than they were 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the mechanism has broken down.
And right, this is not just a Runnemede issue. This is across the
It's
state in all of those
nationwide.
areas.
The GASB 68 is a national government county standards board requirement. It's nationwide. New Jersey just happens to be right in the thick of it. And why it happened this year, it wasn't the state's fault. It was dumped on. It was dumped on everyone, including, they tell you, but it was dumped on me too. It's making a mess of what we do by delaying us, giving us more work when we're on fixed fees. You know, not to be selfish, but we did all our work, and then this, 3 weeks ago, here, guess what? Do this now. We knew somewhat that it was coming, but we didn't realize that it was more what it is.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Any other time, there's always a telephone and get them only down the
Yes,
street.
thank you, we understand that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry it took so long. I wish I could organize my thoughts quicker.
Listen, we're just happy with the one finding. We don't even really.
And that's what, that one's nothing to worry
Actually,
about.
One question.
Sure.
That's why you're not perfect. $189 minimum month, every single one. Gotcha. All right, listen, what I want to do real quick is go through the agenda, because Sean would also like very quickly, if anyone has any questions on it, because you all should have reviewed it already, but Sean also is going to be setting up for a brief park. I'd like to do both of them in this workshop session. So I am going to turn to, does everyone have a paper agenda for the, an updated revised agenda? Okay, I'm gonna start at, I'm gonna skip reports. We'll just have, if anyone has any questions on reports, we'll do that in a regular meeting. So I'm gonna go into new business there on the top of page 4 for property and transportation. Looks like it's just, our field trips are in and some busing. Anybody have any questions there? A lot of busing for our field trips. That's what we're responding.
Just
Any
so you
questions?
know, on number 3 on the agenda, that's us charging another district to transport using our school bus.
So we're actually making money on 3, not spending money, is what you're saying?
Yes, correct.
Any questions there? Personnel? Any questions? No? All right, let's go to finance. Look at number 4.
Number 4 is in reference to what Rand was just talking about in terms of supplies. Most of our supplies come out of Fund 11. However, if you're purchasing an item that's larger, if it's one quantity and it's over 2,000, it must be purchased out of Fund 12.
6, 7, 8, 9 homeless students? Excuse me, 6, 7, 8.
Yes, for 6,
I know, yes, for
7, special education.
Okay,
8.
Yes.
And that contract has actually already been concluded because the
Okay.
students are in Runnemede.
okay.
So it won't be for the full year at this point.
Any questions there for anyone? And then number 9 will be, approving what Mr. Calavita just said, in that one finding in the action plan. No? Curriculum, any questions? our first reading, to it, make the changes on the athletic policy to include 5th to 8th grade instead of 4th to 8th grade. First reading. Any questions, comments, issues, concerns? No? And we do, just so you know, we do have executive session this evening. And Dr. McCarron, you're up.
Okay, I'm gonna get this started. We did receive the park assessment results probably about 2 weeks ago. Parents received their student copies. If their students took the assessment and they counted for a full score, they were sent home with the report cards last week. And the 8th graders were mailed out. The Vols office was working diligently to make sure that everyone got their park scores. So that being said, while we receive the park scores, they come out in streams. Meaning the first thing that we always get from the assessment, and this was the same for New Jersey Ask, was the overview of the data, where we would get the general score that the student got, but we wouldn't really get the breakdowns. So as of right now, I'm going to be giving the overview of the park assessment results. I'm still waiting to get the breakdown of subgroups, which would be your economically disadvantaged, your special education, all the subgroups that we normally address, and I'll be reporting out on those probably at a later meeting. However, we do have to report on the park results to the board within 30 days of receiving them, so that's why I wanted to give you just an update since we've been pushing it off and off as we waited for them to arrive. Okay, so just so everyone understands, before the 300 used to be the mark that we were looking at. Now, the highest score that a student can receive on the park assessment is an 850. And as you can see, instead of having the partially proficient, proficient, advanced proficient, it's broken down into 5 categories, level 1 through 5, and they did not meet expectation, partially met expectation, approached expectation, met the expectation, and exceeded expectation. And if you look at the numbers right above those indicators, you're going to see that it shows you the breakdown. So if your student received a 728, they would fall under level 3, approaching the expectation for the standards at that grade level. Things to think about as we look at this. These scores represent all of our students that we're about to look at. It doesn't represent individual populations with the disaggregated scores that we'll be getting later, and that's the broken down scores. Also, a new mathematics program was piloted during the 14-15 school year and was implemented in grades K to 6 this year.
So do you think that potentially affected it? Is that why you're putting that out?
Now we can't, now every student's individual. This is the first year with the scores, and honestly it's hard to make a comparison since we've never seen them before. What is interesting though is as we looked at the scores, we did see a difference between our pilot math groups, because remember, we had 2 grade levels, pilot in 3rd, 2 and 4th, and the entire 6th grade class was able to use the program last year. And what is interesting is that we actually did see increased scores in those classes when we pulled those students apart than we did in the overall group as a whole. So that, ideally, that gives us the hope that we are moving in the correct direction, and that in our teachers looking at the various math programs that they looked at back in 13-14 to then choose a piloted program for 14-15, that we made the correct selection of what we're using currently. And we did roll that out to all grades K to 6 instead of doing a slow rollout. We wanted every teacher who was going to be using the program to be on the same page moving forward. In grade 8 for algebra, you can see, now what the numbers indicate. Next to the park average score, you see 480,463. That's the number of students who took the assessment. The average score for the park score was 734 that students received, which is good for algebra. The state average, I'm sorry, go
Real
ahead.
quick, so the 480 represents what?
The number of students across all the park states that were tested. So that's not just New Jersey. That's anyone who took the park assessment, the algebra test.
And that 463 represents?
No, it's 480,463 students.
Okay.
And then the state average, we had 91,740 students who took the algebra test in the state of New Jersey. The average score was a 737. Most students, so at Triton, for example, our 8th grade students who weren't in algebra would be in algebra readiness in their freshman year when they go to Triton. So that would be a part of that group. So in many cases, this would be a 9th grade number. In every school, though, you do have your algebra program. In many schools, you have your algebra program. In Runnemede, we had 25 students who took the algebra assessment. The average score on the algebra assessment for Runnemede was 757. So that shows us that what we're teaching our students in that algebra cohort is in line with the averages that we see not only across the state of New Jersey, but also across the Park group.
How many states are in Park?
There were 11 states that participated in the Park assessment.
So of 11 states, we have 91,000 eighth graders doing algebra.
In the state of New Jersey.
Right, so that would mean that 300,000 are dispersed only. We have almost 100,000 in the state of New Jersey, so does that mean we're ahead and they're behind?
It depends on what each state's curriculum is as far as how they're implementing Common Core
Right.
and how many of them are doing algebra. Because once you get into once you get out of 8th grade, you then have your other content areas where they're content-specific tests.
Right.
So it could be a
then-
geometry test, it could be an algebra test.
So how many, if 91,000 eighth graders in the state of New Jersey, if 91,000 eighth graders in the state of New Jersey, which, how many eighth graders are in the total state of New Jersey, right? Because that's just 91,000 that took the algebra.
Not necessarily 8th grade, this is just our 8th grade algebra cohort. So the algebra test is not an 8th grade algebra test, it's an algebra period test. So any
It's not
student,
eighth grade period.
no,
It's ninth grade? No.
it could be 9th grade, it could be 10th grade, depending on where the students are.
Oh,
Any
It's
student,
not eighth grade specific.
correct,
It's algebra, it's subject.
algebra only. And I apologize, I marked 8th grade algebra because that's our cohort,
So this could be 8th to 12th?
could be.
Could be.
Okay.
So, and then what happens is as a test coordinator, you identify what tests the students are gonna take. So our 8th graders who took the algebra Park assessment were not signed up for the 8th grade math assessment. So when you look at our 8th grade math scores, you are going to see that our numbers for 8th grade, our average enrollment per grade level is close to 100. So you'll see that when you look at our 8th grade mathematics, it was 63. When you look at for language arts, it's 82. Now that, you might say, well, those numbers don't add up as far as 63 and 25, but that's also because we had students who might have refused to take the test for certain parts, and that would have changed the numbers of valid scores that we received. So this is all based on the number of valid scores that were received in each of the
Can
areas.
you go back one slide?
Sure.
So the Runnemede average score for math was 720,
No, for 8th grade algebra, it was 757.
not 8 for total algebra. Algebra score was 757.
Correct.
And math was 720.
For the 8th grade math, it was 720, yes.
Well, is that total math, not 8, like, it wasn't 8th grade algebra?
That's the 8th grade students who did not take the algebra
There's only one
assessment.
class that takes algebra.
That was 3 of our classes,
Just,
of the 4.
you said that the algebra wasn't 8th grade algebra, it was total algebra.
Algebra is a class, yes.
But that is 8th grade math.
That's 8th grade math.
For one
This-
group.
For the other 3 groups,
Right.
the one group, because we have 4 groups. The one group took the algebra assessment, the other 3 took the math assessment. So their score isn't averaged in as an overall 8th grade score because you're now looking at 2 separate tests. You're measuring your students' abilities in algebra, whereas in prior years, when students took the New Jersey S, they all took the 8th grade math test. You didn't separate them out for the state assessment. Now you're separating them out. If they're in the algebra program, they take the algebra test. If they are not in the algebra program, they take the 8th grade mathematics test.
That doesn't seem like a fair, if you're telling
It's
me of that
usually-
other 91,000, that's inclusive of 9th and 10th graders, then it's not a fair baseline even for the state, forget us. Just in
However-
general, because you're not pulling from the
Well-
same pool of people.
Well, it depends on, it depends on what class they take in. Some kids can take algebra in 8th grade, most kids take it in 9th grade, and some kids with like IEPs don't finish that course until 11th grade. It's the course, they're basing it on the course.
Right, I understand, but what I'm saying is though, is if you were to take 58,000 and say that 58,000, the number, if 58,000 state average was, if 58,000 was the total number of 8th grade students who took that test,
Yes.
of the other 91,000, we don't know how many were 8th graders.
Well,
So where's the number in
If
between?
you look at the difference, in language arts, state average number of 8th graders who took 8th grade language it was 88,000. So you can see that 30,000 eighth graders took a different math assessment. In Runnemede, do you see
the
what I'm
middle
talking
number?
about? Look at the number of
Middle.
students in eighth grade that took language arts.
Right?
It was 88,000. If you compare that to the number of students who took
You can
eighth
subtract that,
grade
that's
So
math,
is there,
There's
so there's
30
88, there's roughly, well, barring the children that didn't take it,
there's roughly
88,000.
88,000 in the state of New Jersey,
Okay.
eighth grade students.
That's-
So that can tell you that there's about 30,000 students who took the assessment,
30,336.
to be exact. So when you look at this, you can see that, and when you look at these numbers, you can see that as we go through each slide, it falls within 10 points. Some grade levels were above the state, were above the park, some were below the state, were below the park. And in this case, taking into consideration that the 720 represents the removal of those 25 students who would have otherwise taken the eighth grade mathematics assessment, who took the algebra assessment. So that was not factored in.
And that's what I think, I'm not correcting you saying that, excuse, because you took basic kids that are in algebra and didn't, that would have brought that score up. Some of those kids that are not as many kids took the algebra portion.
Correct.
Took the regular math portion and brought our score.
So looking at it from this perspective, you're not giving, you're not giving them the same test as everyone, you're actually giving them the test based on the material that they're being taught. So if they were receiving an eighth grade curriculum, they're taking the eighth grade test, whereas our algebra students are actually following Triton's curriculum for algebra that they follow for the year.
I was actually, what I was thinking in my mind wasn't necessarily the standard difference, but what I was looking at as was the 25 students that we have versus the big number of 91,000. So really 25 in 91 is a fishbowl, meaning it's a small tadpole pond, right? So what I'm saying is that realistically was 25 of 30,000 eighth graders.
Eighth graders.
That's what that's what I was looking at, not 8 to 12. That's not what mattered, what I was thinking.
And really the information that they're showing to us now, because we're still waiting for more information to see how it'll be presented to us. However, they're just trying to show the number of students that took the assessment and then what the average score overall was. And based on the curriculum consortiums I've been to, there's really not much, you can interpret this whichever way you want to at this point in time. But right now, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but as you can see with 7th grade math and 7th grade language arts, everything falls within 10 points. They do break it between reading and writing for language arts. And one thing I will say is that our writing scores, for the most part, were a little bit higher than our reading scores, which I thought was interesting. So it can give us a little bit more in regards to instructionally, what we might be focusing on and looking at, and also looking at the initiatives we've already put in place with cross-curricular and literacy, to ensure that we're going in the right direction in regards to professional development. 6th grade scores, as you can see in math, we were on point with the park average. We were a little bit slightly below. Same is true for language arts. 5th grade. Which one? The pilot program. So when we get down to, as we get into 6th grade, as I said before, 6th grade was one of the grade levels where it was one teacher because we're departmentalized in 6th grade. So that teacher is actually working with all the 6th grade students. So since she piloted our Envisions program that we're currently using this year, this was one of our piloted classes. So of course she was working with consultants and still learning the program as she was working with the student. However, then you'll see with 5th grade, scores might be a little bit lower, but as we look back to that thing, remember the chart, it goes from 650 to 850. So when you look at it from a perspective of 10 points, that's a very slight difference, which could have been a difference of 2 to 3 questions answered differently, might have changed that or skewed that differently. And as Amy had said earlier, you're looking at it from the perspective of 92 students versus 95,640.
Very true, however, an average is an average, average is average, right?
Correct.
So if you're 10 points below anywhere, you gotta figure out why and get that up.
But when you think about it, we've already discussed that in prior years, which is why we invested what we did into a new math series, which was just implemented this year. So when you think about it, it actually kind of matches up with the results that you saw last year with New Jersey as we looked at every grade level and our scores had slightly decreased each year as Common Core was implemented. So this kind of lines up with the decisions that we make. And when we purchased the new math series, we didn't just go right into a program and go that way. We reviewed the programs, different options available, we piloted the following year, and then we implemented to make sure that we wanted to make an investment into the series that we did. And making sure that the teachers who were gonna be using it were the ones who were actually working with it. And as we look here, think about what you've also done in terms of professional development and in-house professional development. And like I said, until I actually get the disaggregated scores to see the specific areas where we had weaknesses and strengths, I'll be able to give more information at that point.
So let me ask you this, well, not only the subject area and where the strengths and weaknesses are, but will you eventually get something showing where every district landed?
As of right now, they are not doing the district factor groups as they did in years past. However, what I will say, as a curriculum consortium within Camden County, many of us have already been speaking in regards to, like, I'm more than willing to share our information if another district's willing to kind of compare. So that way we can kind of see where we are and know where our strengths and weaknesses are. But in terms of speaking with other curriculum directors throughout the county, everyone had similar results, falling within, 10 to 15 points of either the park average or the state average. But until we know what that represents, and
Right, because you don't know how many kids in that state average score are from districts that historically do. better.
Correct.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
So here's another question. How often are states buying into park?
right now I know the state of New Jersey has a 3-year contract with the park assessment.
So this is year 2.
We're in year 2 currently.
Right, okay.
And honestly, if the state decides to change it, then we'll just be changing the, this is, as you know, as a part of receiving federal money as a public school district, this is one of our requirements that we, must test our students to show that we're teaching the standards that we're obligated to teach. But this is just one of the requirements. So should the state choose to change that, as they did with New Jersey Esta Park,
Right.
then they'll be switching that again. 3rd grade scores, and you'll see that this is broken down for mathematics, and then also, and you can say, between Bingham and Downing, it was the same number for both.
What was the state?
State was 745, park average score was 738.
So even though it's a different assessment, I guess my question is this, and the only way we could compare it would be, if we looked at New Jersey Ask last year,
Mhm.
right? And the year before, what was our spread from the state average then and our district spread? To what our district spread is now with the park?
However, one of the things they're gonna say though is it wasn't necessarily a true assessment, and this is from the state, due to the fact that it wasn't necessarily measuring all of the Common Core state standards.
Okay, so if we were, hypothetically speaking, if we were to look at each year for the last 5 years.
When you line up the scores, as far as where we fall compared to state, it's very similar. Because we didn't really fall. Remember, if you think back to previous years, yes, our scores were dropping down internally. We were seeing a decrease in mathematics scores. But in regards to comparison to the state, it wasn't that huge of a difference, just as it is in here. When you look at the differences between them, you're seeing, possibly, in this case, a 6-point and a 1-point difference between the park average, 1 point in the positive, and then when you look at the state average, a 6-point in the negative. But until I actually get the broken down test questions and what it represents, then I'll be able to hopefully give more information. But as of right now, we're still anticipating what that will even look like when it's given to us. 3rd grade language arts. And then you're gonna say, moving forward. Okay, so currently one of the things that we're doing is we're using these scores and discussing them with teachers in grade level meetings. Just having them look at the scores. We're looking at the other piece of assessment that we look at, such as STAR reading, STAR mathematics, LLI, student grades, access tests for our ELL students, to see does it match up. Because one of the things that we always look at is for multiple measures. Can we draw a straight line to see if it makes sense as far as where a student is, or is one assessment off? And in 2016, park administration has been reduced in the amount of time for test administration. So as you know, last year it was 2 separate administration periods that it took to give the park assessment. This year it will be 1. As a district, we aren't really facing the same issues that other districts have in regards to infrastructure and technology, due to the fact that we have enough technology to administer the test within a 1-week period. We're given 5 weeks to give the park assessment. As a district, we're able to do it across the board within 1 week and try and reduce the amount of disruptions to instruction overall. And then, of course, we're gonna be continue to work with districts throughout Camden County to review and analyze the data and see, what the best way to interpret it is. But as they keep saying, this is simply a baseline. So until we actually have another assessment, we're not really gonna have a good idea as far as what a true representation would be from year to year. Questions?
Do you think, is there a time frame on how long it's gonna take for you to get get their data together and figure out where we really live, is in our own district?
As of right now, I can tell you that Runnemede, like as far as putting things out, we've already put all of our information out. Where some districts, parents haven't received the information yet because they want to present it to the board and analyze it. We've always sent out student individual scores immediately, so that wasn't something we were gonna stop now, considering parents were asking for the information. And we felt like it gave parents a good overview or understanding of what it might look like when they received it at home, to have a better understanding. So as soon as I hear more, like I have a meeting tomorrow with the consortium. But right now, we're still waiting, and sometimes you're told when things will be given to you, other times you're not. So it's kind of one of those things that you check on a daily basis. But the same questions you're asking and the same questions you're asking this evening are the same questions everyone else is asking as we're trying to interpret what the data means and how we can look at it.
So, the one thing that, did I not read it right when the report came home? It didn't break it out the way ASK did in the sense of questions, like how it showed where, like comprehension, remember how ASK showed that? You know what I'm talking about? Like that little area that was like.
They have to give us that.
So, no, I know that when the report came home to the parents,
It's just showing them at the levels with
It
those
is.
symbols
it is.
where the student is.
So if there's like a request section that was nice though, it was nice as a parent, that was the one nice thing about Ask, was that it did break out, like in this specific area, it said low average or average, or what, not that it had to be a percentage, but it gave that ranking of what it was that they struggle and where they might not struggle. But there was not enough detail on the report that they
That
sent.
you received for part.
Yes, so if they have a section that says like,
What
what are we doing,
suggestions?
yeah, what can we do better? I'd like to see that communicated. And I understand that we're never gonna have apples to apples, but at least it's another piece of information for people to look at.
Now, one thing also though that they say is that there is more test release questions for parents, so if you wanted to know if your child was low, just approaching expectations, what that question would look like or what the practicing would look like, and a lot, is it the vocabulary, is it the wording, that those are available, whereas with New Jersey Ask, the amount of test release questions was minimal. But for me, like, it goes between the wording and then it goes between the diagrams. So for me, that was a transition to even look at it from that perspective.
Is this info available online?
What's that?
The school test results?
No.
There's no things online on that or anything that is everyone's
At this time, no. Most boards won't present it until January. Yes, they're the ones who sent it, but they didn't post it. Okay.
Any questions? Dr. Karen, can you email this to Mr. Buckheim, who didn't want to miss it, who's sat through many conferences and workshops
Yes,
about park and
absolutely.
ran late on an airplane?
It's that late in Atlanta all day there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if you have any questions, then you can.
Appreciate that.
So, I'm going to adjourn this meeting so we can